Hey everyone, it's Types, and today I'm looking at more of your custom cards. These are submitted through my Discord server, so if you want to submit your own custom cards for me to look at and to also potentially play with in the future, you can join the Discord server. It is linked in my channel, wherever the links are. I think it's in like the About section, which is up top. It's a little hard to find, but if you have questions about where it is, you can ask in the comments, and I might just have it in the comments or description as well. But anyways, these cards are I don't know. I don't know too much about them. I haven't really looked at them. I've taken a quick glance, but we have a Rookity, a whole line. We have a Corviknight line with an EX. I believe these are meant to be played together. And Rookity here has Free Retreat, which is like kind of cool. But also we have Fly Away with the free attacker. Oh, and I said that we might be able to play with them. I'm going to I'm like creating a set, a community set. That's not necessarily one cohesive set, but it's just a bunch of different cards throughout created from the community, and you can find that again in the Discord server. But anyways, Rookity, fly away, shuffle this Pokemon, all cards attached to it into your deck for free, which is kind of interesting. Obviously not particularly useful on just this basic, but it might have interactions with the evolution. Then we have Corvisquire. It has an ability which says item hunt once during your turn. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may have your opponent reveal their hand. If you find at least 5 item cards there, I think there's supposed to be a space. I'll also give like feedback if I think there are like mistakes. You may have there might actually be a space there, and this is I believe these are pretty much all made through PokeCardMaker.net. This is a website that allows you to make Pokemon cards, and it's what I use whenever I make cards, and it's what most people use, I think. But there are a few like weird things about it. But anyways, if you have at least 5 item cards if you found at least 5 item cards there in your opponent's hand, you may have your opponent shuffle all their item cards from their hand into their deck. Wow, okay. And if your opponent shuffled any cards into their deck in this way, search for up to 2 item cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. This is an interesting ability. I'll come back to it in just a moment. Obviously, really strong if you get it to trigger, but it's also not super easy to trigger. Then we have Corviknight. This has it evolves from Corvisquire as Single Prizer, which is colorless, versus the EX is Metal, and you have the attack special hunt for 2 colorless, 60 discard all special energy and play both yours and your opponent's. That's pretty interesting. We generally don't see these effects that discard. I can't really think of anything that discards your own special energy like this. There might be attacks that discard special energy and just do damage based on it, but having a downside to yourself is kind of interesting. In a deck like this, you would presumably be wanting to play special energy. Special energy tend to work specifically with how they are in standard. You want like double turbo energy or some type of energy like that, and you'd want to include them here within a deck like this. But then there's a downside, so you want to kind of consider that. And then obviously discarding special energy from your opponent's board, good against Lugia, V-Star, and other decks as well. And we have Brave Bird for 3 colorless. It does 220 and 60 to itself. That seems pretty solid. It feels pretty fair, I feel like. Then we have Corviknight EX, which says it has 330 HP, and this is a metal Pokemon and uses metal energy. When you attack for metal colorless, it does 80. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 100 less damage from attacks. Then we have Raven Strike, which does 300 for 3 metal and 190 to itself. Honestly, I feel like this attack isn't like, so you can never use this back to back. Well, so let's say you do 190 to yourself, so then you have 140 left. And that's like, that's not like no HP, but it's not that much. Obviously, if you use it back to back, unless you do a bunch of healing, then you are going to end up knocking yourself out, right? So I feel like the Rookity attack is kind of loosely connected. I think it's kind of interesting. You have the Relicanth, which allows you to copy it, and there might be some other stuff. Yeah, this card is not related. Some of the cards were submitted like together. There is like a slow mode in the Discord server, but that's just so I don't want people like sending messages there. If you want to talk about cards, feel free to do that in the discussion channel. But then yeah, set like obviously these 4 are an evolution line here. There isn't like that much synergy. There doesn't always have to be synergy within evolution lines, specifically with the Corvisquire. In fact, there's almost like no synergy. Not that they're like solid cards and they have solid uses together. There's my synergy here. You can use Fly Away, copy that with the Corviknight using Relicanth, and if you attack and then you're knocked out somehow, then you can heal off massive amounts of damage. Also, you have 2 attacks that are like very different, right? You have a defensive attack and a very like a self-damaging attack, which is kind of cool. But then we have Corvisquire here with its ability. This one, and it needs to be in the active as well, does have 1 retreat. And then, okay, the stage 2s have 2. And it says So that if it triggers, that's like really powerful, really destroying your opponent's hand. Generally, I feel like this won't trigger very commonly, and your opponent will know this is coming. If they like actually know what cards are in the format. If you're playing against someone and they don't know this card, like aren't prepared for some random custom card, then they won't know it's in the format. But assuming that they do, then they will know this is coming and they can just play their items. Theoretically, if you're playing an item lock deck, this could be powerful, but then you would need to switch into the active, then back out. If you're playing this with like Bayonet EX or Venomoth or whatever. So that is probably what you're looking at as a very solid use of this, and it's actually not hurting your opponent that much. Removing their items from their hand, I mean, it means it can limit their options, but with their item locked, it's not limiting them because they're not doing anything. It just means that you can now break item lock safer. And against certain like control-based decks, this could be really strong, but it's just an ability and it's not an attacker. So ultimately, it's a card that will not necessarily win you the game in control, just like annoy your opponent and allow you to do some cool things. But against decks like Turbo decks or Stage 2 decks, which are like the main decks in the game right now, Trapco's EX is kind of like floating in, but it's certainly not a Turbo deck. It's not really a Stage 2 deck either, though it does have Stage 2s in it, but decks like that, you have like a bunch of items, but you're not really going to be drawing 5 items. Theoretically, you could be drawing 5, then get like punished for it, but that seems pretty rare. This card does have some solid use cases, and searching for 2 items, like it's a really insanely powerful ability if it triggers. I feel like I'd potentially reduce like the number 5 just to maybe like when it shuffles all items from the hand, not just 5. I might make it so if they have at least 3, oh no, maybe they reveal their hand, and if there's an item there, they shuffle 1 and they choose what it is, or something like that. This is this incredibly explosive ability. Obviously, it's a pretty different idea what I'm suggesting, but then you get to like get more consistent value off of this. But it's not really intended to be an engine either. It's just like an addition to this evolution line, which is logical as well. I'm trying to think if these were submitted for a custom card contest, and I don't think they were. But overall, a cool line. Nothing like super crazy, but definitely cool. And super crazy can be really fun. It also can be too much. But Fragile Energy here. This is a card I've seen before. I don't know if I've talked about it. I think this might have been a custom card challenge thing for somewhere else. But Fragile Energy says as long as it provides, it's attached. It's a colorless energy and the attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to do 30 more damage to your opponent's Pokemon. I guess doesn't necessarily need to be the active. And if the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, I think that's supposed to be that player takes 1 more prize card. That's pretty interesting. I feel like this is a little weak, like, or if it's really good, then it's super broken. I mean, within Lugia V-Star, theoretically, you could just like stack a bunch of these on like some random Pokemon, and then all of a sudden just be like obliterating Pokemon. And yes, if you give out, if you like get knocked out, you lose, because I believe this stacks. But ultimately, I think this is like a cool card where it has a very interesting downside, a very serious downside. Theoretically, if you're playing a deck where the downside never really comes into play, it's like super broken, or it's like very good at the very least. If you're building a very tanky defensive deck, you might be able to play in that manner. Ultimately, it might end up, creating these unfun play styles, as we see in the game right now, where where the top 2 decks based on like ladder play win rate, my experience as well, are Snorlax and Iron Thorn ZXs are pretty boring. So certainly Pokemon doesn't shy away from that. But yeah, Fragile Energy is definitely a really interesting card with a really interesting downside. That is cool, and is something you could play in any deck as well. Then we have Tatsugiri EX, and this art's really good. From whoever made this, which the name is down here. Then we have the in 190 HP, which is that this? No, the one that's coming out is 160, I think. But a second attack, 180 for Fire, Water, Colorless. Shuffle all energy attached to this Pokemon into your deck. That's like okay. That feels pretty mediocre. Keep in mind, it is a dragon. A lot of dragons in the standard form right now are looked at as partners for Regidrago V-Star. Obviously, something like Dragapult EX is its own deck, and same thing with Raging Bolt EX, but they're also partners. Specifically, Dragapult EX is a very big partner with Regidrago V-Star. I feel like Raging Bolt EX is also like a card that you could play in there. People generally don't, but it allows you to take one-shots, which you will struggle with sometimes. But anyways, Tatsugiri EX's first stack says Quick Dive. If you go first, you can use his attack during your first turn. Shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. That's kind of interesting. I'm trying to think like if this is problematic. This with Fragile Energy, because these were like revealed together to me by really Brzezinski, and they are like hitting 70 turn one's like a lot, and there are ways to increase the damage. I'm sure, like there have to be. I mean, there are ways that you can like poison your opponent and stuff, so you can take these turn one knockouts, which is a bit problematic. It is an interesting attack here that adds some versatility to like a card. I feel like the second attack's pretty. I don't know. I could see Pokemon printing an attack like this, but it feels a little underwhelming in terms of its power level. But the first attack's pretty interesting. I can't really think of. There are some attacks kind of like this, and it is hit and run as well. So you do need to bench Pokemon, and is leaving the battlefield. Ultimately, the two attacks don't really have much synergy, other than the fact that you're kind of like throwing stuff out of play, which is like an idea and a concept that is completely understandable. Again, this has a lot of synergy with Fragile Energy. I don't know if they're meant specifically to be paired together. I guess with Fragile Energy, another issue is like attacks that are just like removing the energy from play, like your opponent just hitting you over and over with like Wellspring Mass Ogerpon EX, and then doing like what they got Legacy and then the two Fragile Energies, and then all of a sudden they're hitting what is it 140 to the active and 160 to the bench, and then not giving up any extra prizes, which is like kind of insane. Or if it doesn't stack, then it's still a good chunk of damage. So this card definitely feels like it's kind of intended to have synergy with Fragile Energy. Fragile Energy does seem like a card that is kind of exploitable. And same thing with this Tatsugiri EX, though it could be interesting and enable these like powerful turn one attacks. Right now, obviously, turn one you can't attack except for like really specific circumstances, which are pretty mediocre, not like terrible, but not particularly strong either. Then you also have abilities to end your turn, which are certainly, excuse me, very valid. Well, Rotom V is really good. Not sure if there are any other ones that really see much play, or actually in the game. A lot of them rotated. Then we have restart ticket. It says if this card is in your hand when you're setting up to play, when you're like setting up your Pokemon before you place any Pokemon in the active spot or on your bench, you may discard it from your hand. This card. If you do shuffle your hand to your deck, then draw 7 cards. This is kind of interesting. It's like a mulligan, right? But it's not the mulligan for the fact that you're not giving your your opponent cards in their hand, extra cards to start off with. The really cool thing about this is like this is a thing, and I don't know too many other card games, but I do know Magic a little bit, and this is a thing in Magic. Mulligans, you can choose to take mulligans. You don't ever have to take them. There's a lot of differences, though not that many because Pokemon may or may not be based on Magic. But anyways, restart ticket is pretty interesting, allowing you to wait. Is restart ticket a card? Um, no. Am I thinking of? I think I'm thinking of first ticket. What's reserve ticket? I don't know. Like these cards are just like weird cards. But anyways, restart ticket. Oh, I think I'm thinking of the card that isn't out yet. The this one, which I don't what does this translate? Here's obstruction letter. What is that? Anyways, so restart ticket here is definitely a card. It is pretty cool, allowing you to take these mulligans, but also obviously not something that has consistent value. And I think there was the card, the Meowstic, which I really liked. I made a video on it, and the video did like super bad. But I really like the design of the Meowstic because it takes an item which lacks value. Like this item literally is never playable from your hand, literally ever. You can discard it, I guess, and you're like kind of playing it, and that's before the game even starts. So you can't ever play this during the game, and I feel like you want a card that can still get value. Like you want someone to get value out of this, other than it's just like discard fodder for random stuff, which is like not really value out of a card. Like people just said like random items are like discard fodder for Cramorant, but that doesn't mean the card's good. It's like a thing about the card. So ultimately, though, I think adding some value, some specific value in something like the Meowstic we saw, I actually think this card, this restart ticket, would be something better than I think it was translated as like relaxing teaser or something. The one that's like an energy disruption card on turn one, which is like why? That's like wait and see hammer too, right? Um, yeah, it's actually pretty similar. I might be like the same. I forgot wait and see hammer existed because like what is this? I mean, it's a card that it saw some play certainly, but what wait and see hammer? Anyways, let's move on to the next card though, which is Pokédex Rotom, and I guess that's the name. So yeah. Anyways, because like different Pokemon like Castforms and Rotoms and nodes and stuff, sometimes they are all like the same name and sometimes they're different names. So it doesn't really matter though. It's not like Rotoms. Well, Rotom V is good, but not other Rotoms. So we have PokeQuiz is this long ability here, which is once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may put a Pokemon from your hand face down in front of you and tell your opponent the name of an attack it has. There were some cards like this. I think they got what was it? Was it Blaine's Quiz Show? Um, yeah, it's similar to that. But anyways, it says you may put it in front of you. If your opponent guesses the name of that attack, it has, or the guesses the name of the Pokemon, then you reveal it. Oh no, your opponent guesses the name and then you reveal it. If they guessed right, discard the top two cards of your deck. If they guessed wrong, you draw two cards, which is kind of interesting. And then you return the Pokemon to your hand, and you can't use more than one PokeQuiz ability each turn. So that's pretty. This is really interesting. The reason this card got banned, well, okay, in Pokemon Digital Live, it was like not implemented. Is this card implemented in Live? If anyone has played with it or played against it, actually, that's what I'm more interested in. Tell me if this card is like implemented because it used to not be implemented, and you could do this like a really weird glitch, um, where you'd, live is weird. So, and this is really interesting. The reason it got banned though in IRL play, temporarily was for the World Championship specifically, was because of like language barrier issues. But obviously, like you're not like normally playing with people in different languages, and if you're playing with someone who doesn't speak the language or read the language on the card, then like they might not know every card, right? So you still have other issues there. So ultimately, like this would work most of the time. And then it's kind of weird. Like it's not that weird though. It's a cool card. Um, could build a deck. We could get value out of discarding. This is a fun card. I don't know if it's like a good card or a bad card, but this is a really fun card and definitely a silly card. And I think it's really fun. I'm thinking about it in Pokemon DCG or in PTCG Simulator, which is how we're gonna play with the cards. I might run a tournament. I'm not sure. That might go very badly because the cards are kind of weird and some are kind of vague, and I'm sure there are lots of like weird rulings that might come up that I don't know the answer to. But anyways, this is pretty cool. I don't know how you implement it or play with it in PTCG Sim, but whatever, that doesn't matter. Or actually, no, I do know how you would. Anyways, we have Dondozo EX up next, and this one here as the ability commander. First of all, Wave Crash for 5 water, just 240. This Pokemon can attack next turn. It has 240 HP, which is pretty high on the basic. And the damage output is solid, but obviously expensive. Then we have, if you have like ability commander, which I know is based on the video game. I don't know much about the video games, but I do know that's from the game. If you have Tatsugiri in your hand, you may attach it to this Pokemon as a tool card. If you do, this Pokemon gains 100 HP to like its max HP, I'm assuming. It takes 100 less damage from attacks, and attacks used by this what? Pokemon do 100 more damage. If this Pokemon is knocked out, your opponent takes 3 prizes instead. This is really cool. Like a pretty logical extension of the video game ability. I'm not 100% sure how it works, but this makes a lot of sense. I think the numbers are too high. Well, I think the damage is like fair. Obviously really high, but it's expensive. And it is a 3 prizer, right? So, 3 prizers have historically been a little controversial, specifically with VMAX and tag teams, which were like super strong, but they were super strong because they were super strong, not just because they were 3 prizers. So, anyways, this is cool. I feel like the gaining 100 extra HP and taking 100 less. Also, sorry, like I'm a little sick still, but taking 100 less damage, you essentially get like 200 extra HP, so you're at 400 HP, which is absurd. You could be essentially at 500 HP by sticking a Bravery Charm. Like this is absurdly tanky. I feel like I'd remove the 100 extra HP, maybe the 100 less damage, I don't know, or reduce them. Like I feel like 100 between the two feels pretty fair, maybe a little bit more, but this is pretty cool. And your opponent takes 3 prizes instead of 2 when knocking it out. If you have Tatsugiri, which makes sense, I feel like that feels very fair. I could almost see it giving up 4 prizes. Fundamentally, 4 prizers. I don't know what they do to the game because you can't take if you knock out any quantity of 4 prizes, you're not going to exactly get to 6 prizes, right? So, 6 is a multiple of 4, so that'll cause some issues there. But I think that might be balanced if it was a 4 prizer. I don't know. It's kind of weird and messy, but You probably play this with Baxcalibur. You have Tatsugiri. This is pretty cool. I feel like it's very easy to just get a Tatsugiri in your hand. I mean, it's not completely free, but it's pretty easy. But this is a really, really fun card concept. Then we have Mr. Stone's Ultimatum, a supporter card, which says search your discard pile for 2 Pokemon with different names. Your opponent chooses one of those Pokemon, shuffle that Pokemon into your deck, put the other Pokemon onto your bench. That is really, really interesting. This, if you don't realize, it can get evolution Pokemon straight onto your bench, and that is the value there. And you do recover the other cards, so it is going to be recovering both cards guaranteed. Normally, giving your opponents a choice is bad because, well, I don't know. Obviously, it's better if you have the choice than your opponent having the choice. I guess a card like Iron Bundle isn't bad, but the example that came to my mind was Swordward and Shieldbird or whatever, which was so bad. It's like draw 3 or like recover a card, but your opponent chooses, so they'd always choose the one that's worse for you. So it's essentially objectively worse than a draw 3. But anyways, this card is pretty cool. Getting a random like stage, getting a two different names. So you could go and say like, oh, I have Pidgeot EX and Dragapult EX in my discard, and you could say like turn 1, I'm guaranteed to get one of these into play, which is pretty insane, not that hard to do, and it just like super super strong, right? So this is cool though. I feel like it's not super broken. Your opponent obviously has control over it, and you can't ever guaranteed get a certain Pokemon to play. You can't guarantee your opponent's probably more scared of the Dragapult, right? So you can't get the Dragapult EX into play. I feel like it might be a little strong. Like obviously custom cards are supposed to be like some people are like, oh, that custom cards like too good. It's like, well, they're custom cards, right? They're supposed to be fun and they're supposed to be really good and kind of silly. But also this one like could be it's very strong, right? So it allows you to get some insanely strong Pokemon into play turn 1 that might be very problematic. Theoretically, you could be running like different decks. I don't really know exactly, but it obviously is theoretically very, very strong. It allows you to get any Pokemon in the game into play turn 1. You can't choose, but if you have the option between 2 Pokemon, the one that's in play, like you could, I don't know, you could be playing a deck you could be playing 2 decks at once, is kind of what I was thinking, which is like super absurd. But you could be playing like, see, Charizard DX, excuse me, Charizard DX is a card that like I would say is a good example, but it doesn't work because its ability wouldn't happen. But like Dusknoir and like Dusknoir's a very strong card. If you get out to play turn 1, that's like insane. You can't obviously, but with this you could. And then you have like a Dragapult EX. You could say, which isn't they're in the same deck, but you could say I want Dusknoir and Dragapult EX, and now immediately be applying Brent's pressure right now. No matter what your opponent says, you can still do that. And so it's a really strong card though. It's a really cool card. Obviously it's a supporter that isn't directly like drawing you cards, or it's not boss either, right? Those are what supporters generally are, or disruption. It's not none of those things, but it could allow you to get a Drongin into play, and it's a very fun card. Then we have Beheeyem EX. This one says that you have the ability Mind Tricks, which says once at the end of your turn, after you attack, and I believe after you take your prizes, we've seen a few things like this, you may use this ability. Both players shuffle their hand to their deck and draw 5. That's really interesting. Obviously, it's drawing a bunch. It's better than Judge. It's on the upper end of Iono. We saw Marshadow, which is on play, which you can play turn 1 going first, is Judge, I think. Yeah, I believe you shuffle into deck. So it's like Judge, but that is some amount of disruption. This is not very much disruption. It's mostly just card draw, and it's pretty solid card draw. And it does have some form of disruption, and it's about the same level of disruption. Like, you can't play these cards on like right now, right? The cards that you draw into, you can't play, but your opponent can obviously play them on their turn just as much as they could if they were Iono'd. So it's not like that's nerfing or buffing it in terms of what your opponent is going to be hit by. So this is kind of cool. And then you have Tractor Beam Pull as your attack here, which is for Psychic Colorless. Switch in one of your opponent's bench to the active. If you do, this attack does 100 to the new active. This is an attack we've been seeing a bunch by Pokemon, and it's not really been very good because they just put it on these Pokemon that just aren't very good. But this is a cool attack that I would like to see play. I honestly don't think this attack's super strong either. It's okay. The ability is really, really cool. theoretically you could use multiple Mind Tricks abilities, I think, if you have like multiple Bahia EXs, which would be kind of interesting. Theoretically pretty strong, but then these are also cards you can't necessarily use. Your opponent might be able to Iono you or like judge you or whatever, and they'll probably try to do that. But Bahia EX, I love this ability. Nothing super crazy with the attack. This ability would be really fun. Then we have Regieleki EX, and we got all the Reggies here. We got like a card to support them as well. We have Regieleki EX, which says Speed of Light if you have an evolution Pokemon or a Reggie Pokemon, I assume, is what it's supposed to say in play. You have a Pokemon tool attached to this Pokemon. All of your Pokemon have no retreat, or has it should be have. And so then you have Supercharged Breaker, which is the name of the Japanese set. But anyways, 220, shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it. This Pokemon into your deck. If this Pokemon has 2 or more energies attached, put 2 energies from this Pokemon or I guess onto one of your other Pokemon before shuffling Regieleki EX. And yeah, okay, that's like just an energy saving attack. Then we have Regidrago EX here. It has 220 HP again. Do they all have 220? No, some have more, but anyways, we got Regidrago EX, which says Dragon DNA. Once during your turn, you may choose an ability of your Dragon Pokemon on your discard pile. I assume into your discard pile. You may use it as this ability. Wow, that's really interesting. Copying abilities is something that always is something cool. Like that, I wish. I don't know. It's obviously something that could get really scary and could really break the game, but it's really cool and something that we see in a lot of custom cards, and I think would be really fun. Then there's Dragon Energy, which does for Grass, Fire. It does 120 if you have 2 extra energies attached to this Pokemon. Spread 12 damage counters anywhere on the board. I don't know if this is gonna be on your own Pokemon. I feel like the attack wording could definitely be cleaned up a little bit here, but yeah, that's Sableye, but that's also for 5. This could be used within Regidrago V-Star as well, and would have a solid value there. We actually saw another Regidrago VX as well, but yeah, and then oh no, it's 2 more. I think then the attacks cost. So you would need 4 to repeat Regieleki. I was a little confused there. Then we have Regirock EX, and it says solid formation if you have a Regigigas EX, which also the EX symbol looks like kind of weird in PokeCardMaker.net. But anyways, it's like it looks like that. And if you have a Regigigas EX, Registeel EX, Regieleki, if you have all the EXs in play, your bench Regi Pokemon cannot be put into the active by effects of supporter or item cards. Wow, okay, that's pretty strong, though not absolutely insane. Like, in terms of things you want to be gusting up the Regis doesn't have that much value. Like, they're decently tanky basic Pokemon, not like super tanky, but also in the active probably is like around the same HP as them, and unless it's for weakness, in which case, like, stopping yourself from getting absolutely obliterated by a deck that hits you from weakness seems completely fair. And yeah, definitely something. This like seems like a really solid way of doing these anti-gusting cards. I feel like anti-gusting just is like kind of bad right now because there are both supporters and items that can do it. So stopping both is really what you need to do. There are also some other things, but right now there's mostly those. Then we have Rock Formed Slam, which does for Fighting Colorless 150. If this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool attached, discard the tool. If you do, this Pokemon takes 80 less damage from your opponent's attack next turn. And yeah, that's like an attack, or that's like an effective attack we've seen before. And yeah, I mean, I think we saw it on one of the what is it? Iron Treads. I don't remember which one it was. Was it the single prizer? No. Was it the EX? Yeah, yeah. You discard the Future Booster Energy. You discard all Future Booster Energy capsules from this Pokemon. So I guess there could be. I don't know how there's more than one, but if you have more than one, you discard all of them. And if you do during your opponent's next turn, it takes 150 less damage from attacks. And something pretty similar here. Same damage output, similar attack cost as well, but less damage that you're reducing, but obviously you have a lot of very different things that you're doing with the Regis here. And we have Regicx, which says we have these attacks should be switched as well. But Fusing Area for Water Colorless, it does 20 more damage for each bench Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's. Then your opponent's active Pokemon cannot retreat. If this Pokemon has 2 extra energies attached, your opponent cannot use item cards to retreat. I guess that should be like switch, I assume is what you mean. Well, no, you could use item, like in Pocket, you can use what's like X speed, I think, and that allows you to like retreat easier, which I guess is an item using to retreat, but assuming you mean like switch. And at the end of your opponent's turn, your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out, and you cannot use this attack for 2 turns. Wow, okay, even if this Pokemon retreats by, yeah. I think you don't need to say this last part. I forget how to word this. Generally, I word my cards. This is a tip for anyone making cards as well. If you're like not sure of the wording of something, or even the capitalization, punctuation, italicizing. I've like looked all of these like weird things up, and I don't know a lot of these things off the top of my head, and they change as well. So you want to look at newer cards. You can look at new cards, or old cards if the newest card you could find is not that new on the subject, and copy that. So there's Terrakion. This is a little different than Terrakion because it's not and this is something I'm not super familiar with. But there's like effects of attacks on Pokemon, but there are also effects of attacks on players and like the board and stuff. There are these like board state checks and things like that. So you'd say, yeah, I guess you'd say if one of your Pokemon used Frozen Solid last turn or the turn before, this attack can't be used. And then it says it stops retreating, switching, and then it says at the end of your opponent's next turn, they're knocked out. They can't switch out. The instant knockout thing is after the if you have the 5 energies, which is obviously a bunch, and this doesn't work with the Regigigas, like Reggie's box deck. I feel like it could be interesting if it worked with that. Obviously, it doesn't really. Like you need to reword the Regigigas, but anyways, this is a cool attack. I feel like it's kind of weird doing damage and then instantly knocking him out. Like feels kind of weird. But this is a cool concept, saying that the instant knocking out pairing with item lock and retreat lock and things like that. Obviously, getting value out of an instant knockout at the end of your opponent's turn. If they switch out, then the effect of the attack is removed. Then it's like, well, that didn't do anything. There are supporters which can switch or just scoop up or whatever. But this will be stopping most of those things. We do have Registeel EX. So Pokemon takes 30 less damage from evolution Pokemon. Pretty straightforward. I feel like this card feels like much more simple than the other ones. Laser Beam does 150 and then 50 to 2-year points Pokemon. I guess benched. I think I don't remember how if you need to say benched on attacks like this. Obviously that's what I'm assuming, that you're not hitting the active for 200 than one of the benches for 50. But yeah, this is definitely a pretty straightforward card with like a solid attack. And I feel like the ability should like interact with the other edges in some way. Like this card versus this card, like the event of text. One of the things I was saying was I said there are some things weird with PokeCardMaker.net, and one is the amount of text on which you can fit on the card. Is like the card in a normal Pokemon card, like Grand Tree, which is gonna look ugly because it's an ace spec and those don't look very good. I think the text is smaller. I'm not actually sure, but I believe Pokemon will make the text smaller. Or like make the card, they can like change some stuff to make sure the text fits. And this like text is like it's touched at the top level here, or the energy symbol. But like this card obviously like could have more. It's not like it needs more stuff, but I definitely could see it having more stuff. Then we have Regigigas EX. This one has Regi call. I think so. The one thing, the term that's used is Regi Pokemon. Obviously, this is used like the Regis, but in Pokemon, I think you need to say Pokemon with like Pokemon EX or the Regigigas. Oh no, with Regi in their name. I think you can just say because there's like Kyurem, right, which refers to or cards with a certain thing in their name. Um, Cards that have Reggie in their name. So you'd say, I think that's what you're supposed to say. Anyone who's like good knows a lot about the rules. Tell me, I'm pretty sure that's what you should say though. Search for 2 Pokemon with Reggie in their name, which is different than have the name like have the word Reggie in their name, which is something like Ball Guy or whatever. I don't know if there are any examples in Standard that I'm just forgetting. And then put it onto your bench or put them onto your bench because there's 2 of them, and then shuffle your deck, and that's obviously like pretty logical. And this would work. Does this work with the EXs and the single prizes? I'm not sure. You're probably not putting them together though. And then you have Gigantic Guidance, which I like the attack name here. 200 for 3 colorless. If you have a Pokemon tool attached, discard the tool. If you don't have a tool attached to this Pokemon cannot attack next turn. That's interesting. After you attack, search for up to 3 energy cards and attach them to any Regi Pokemon enemy you like. Again, I'm assuming this can work on the EXs, and I guess the single prize as well. And this is like a Pokemon that's kind of locked into the Regis. It's kind of like it's not like the regular Regis archetype is it's a Regigigas deck, right? That's the ability that matters. The attackers definitely do matter, but the ability on Regigigas is the most important thing in the deck, and it's what like the deck is. And this is like an important part of the Regis deck, the Regi EX deck, and you do have the attack, which is kind of like Arceus V-Star, accelerating a bunch of energy. And it's a cool card, and I think these have some cool synergies. And then there's this item, Commander Tablet, which says Regi Commander, and it says if the tool this card is attached to is a Regigigas EX, you may use this attack. Choose an attack from one of your bench. Wait, what? Oh, Regi's Pokemon that uses this. I don't know if you need this to be. This is like a TM, but it like stays on, I guess. Um, I feel like you don't need to oh, I guess it means that you can use it for colorless, which is interesting. So you don't need any types of the bench Pokemon, but obviously you get value out of having these types. Oh, also for Regieleki, I didn't really talk about Regieleki too much. I kind of glossed over it. Like a lot of these are really strong, but and also you can have like 5 energies, and then you can copy with the Commander Tablet Regi Commander attack thing here, and then you can just attack for any of those attacks because the regular attack cost is whatever, right? And that does take the certain type, but then the 2 extra energies can be of any type on the different Pokemon. I think the Regieleki ability is solid. I mean, I think it's good. I think it's balanced, though. I don't think it's completely like game breaking. Giving your Pokemon 3 retreat is nice, especially Regigigas just has 3 retreat. But they all have pretty high retreat. Oh, they all have 3 retreat except for Regieleki. And then I'm trying to think of Regidrago EX. Once during your turn, you may choose an ability of your Dragon Pokemon in your discard pile, and you may use it as this ability. Um, I think it's supposed to be the other way around, right? Or no, maybe that is the right way around. I don't know. But this is a cool ability. I don't know. Like this has how does this interact with abilities that aren't like activated abilities? They're like passive abilities like um what are the dragon abilities in the standard? Oh, you have Kyurem. I don't know, like how would this interact with Kyurem, which is like a passive ability, kind of. It's like an effect attack thing. I don't know. Or let me find the dragon Pokemon in standard with abilities. There we go. Found them. And then, oh, there are not a lot. Okay. What? So how would this work with like a Dragonite? Like your Pokemon have free retreat, but then they like stop having free retreat or they keep having it. This could be pretty cool with some of the. There's like honestly, this is like not a lot. Some of the Garchomp is pretty interesting. I don't know how this would like interact. There's a lot of really weird interactions here, that are complicated. That's like kind of the cool part about custom cards, and so you can kind of like make up the rules as you are making the card and just have like a big rule sheet. I think this is a little complicated. Um, I think the only ability this works clearly with oh no it works with Regidrago, it works with Tatsugiri, and it works with Dracoloak, and I guess it works pretty clearly with the V Stars as well. They are V Star powers. But then and then Altaria EX it works with as well. But then like Kyurem, Fracture, Dragonite, Radiant Eternus, I don't think it like does it. Like Garchomp, these are like on play abilities. And then the Garchomp specifically an on evolution ability. Then like there's a bunch of passive ones, Hisuian Gudra, Dragonite, Kyurem, Fracture. So I don't know exactly how this will work. I'd feel like it should be like it has the ability until the end of maybe your opponent's next turn or the end of your turn, depending how you want to use it. Like it gets that ability as opposed to it uses that ability, because using the ability is like a thing that happens at one point, and not all abilities necessarily follow that. I don't know. It's kind of weird. There's like a lot of weird stuff with the copying abilities. We looked at a few cards like that. Previously. But then we have one last card here, which is Sableye EX. This is a Pokemon. Also, these are not all the cards that have been submitted. I'm just going to doing some of them. I might look at the rest on a live stream, or I might not. I might look at them separately. But we have Sableye EX here. It's a Terra Pokemon. It is a Stellar Pokemon as well, specifically. Is that this? What Oh, is there a way to find the Stellar Pokemon? I don't think there is. What is Hydreigon EX's attack cost? Okay, that is the same types. That looks so bright here. Anyways, Sableye EX here says Cetera, 180 HP, which fits like thematically. That's a pretty fair amount of HP. Grease Smash for Darkness Colorless 180. If your opponent's active is a Terra is knocked out, take an extra prize card. I feel like I personally am not generally a fan of taking extra prizes. I mean, like it can be enjoyable to play with those cards, but ultimately they're generally not so fun to play against. So I'm not sure if I like this attack or don't like it, but it definitely is solid. It's not like one-shotting Terra Pokemon really at all as well, so it's not an attack that's going to be super oppressive. It's okay, but I feel like just one-shot any. I don't know what the Terras are. I mean, I guess it does. Like Dedenne EX, I think is Dedenne EX a weak? I think it doesn't have very much HP anyways. So that it is not weak, but it doesn't have very much HP. So you could like one-shot it for 3 prizes, but like who's playing that, right? So you could also attach like do 30 extra damage somehow, and then be one-shotting a Pokemon an Ogerpon EX for 3 prizes, which is pretty strong. Then we have um, Showerlight. What is this? I guess it's some like gem claws, and it does 80 plus. Oh, this like some of the gems, they look really cool. This one is like getting a little bit in the way of the text though, but it does 90 more for each of your opponent's Terra in play. Okay, so punishing Terras here. That's obviously a one-shotting attack. Um, I feel like this Terra is like a little weak. I mean, it's like really hard to power up. It is strong against certain decks. But ultimately, it's not a card you can build around because it is the same types as the Hydreigon EX. You could put in that deck, although I do believe the Hydreigon EX will not be played for its Terra attack, just like pretty much every other Terra or each Stellar Pokemon. Stellar attack is what I meant to say. So this attack is definitely kind of cool. Nothing like super crazy, but certainly something that is like solid. I feel like it is, especially because you do want to be attacker the first attack as well. It can get insane value. I don't know if there's really enough value in the second attack, but definitely some pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff going on here. Anyways, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on these custom cards. I just looked and I accidentally unplugged my laptop charger. So I was like, is it dying? It is back though. And anyways, these are really fun cards. I can't wait to play with some of these. I think my favorite, I don't know, I definitely thought there were some really cool ones. I guess my favorite, I like Restart Ticket. That's a cool card. And the Rotom, no, what's this? Pokédex Rotom with Pokéquiz. And then the Mr. Stone's Ultimatum as well as a really fun supporter concept because it allows you to obviously, you know, and go ahead and do some really crazy combos. Might be a little too strong, but definitely seems really fun. Dondozo EX is cool. I mean, I did like all the cards. No, I don't know. I was just going through and I was like, oh, which ones did I forget about? I like the Reggies. I liked Sableye. I like the Covenant. I liked all the cards, but my favorite one, if I had to say, might be Restart Ticket. I feel like this one paired with a Meowstic. Like this card, I feel like does want some value in the later, like after turn 0. But it does seem like a really fun card. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, join the channel because you can get some special stuff for that. And I hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.